Our feet walk with us through every day, so let's wrap them in a cozy hug with hand-knitted socks. In this tutorial I want to show you how you can pick up stitches from a garter stitch edge and two methods to close the hole in the corner. One method is really easy and beginner friendly, and the second method is a little bit more advanced. I learned it from my husband's granny. She is now 90 years old and knits at least 3 pairs each month. I was already knitting and filming a whole tutorial, but then I saw that the stitches are really hard to spot and you don't have anything from a tutorial where you can see what I'm doing. You can see here that the stitches are really hard to spot because of the fluffiness of the yarn, and I don't want to make a tutorial where you are not able to follow along the steps. So I have worked another swatch with another yarn where the stitches are a bit easier to spot. I did only knit a little cuff and a few rounds on the leg, and then I started the heel and heel turn. When we look at our garter stitch edge, you can see all these little ridges here. This is where we will pick up our stitches. One ridge represents 2 rows, so I have 13 ridges for 26 rows. I will pick up 13 stitches here. And on the other side, the ridges are a little bit harder to spot because they are upside down. But when you look closely, you can also see all these little bumps here, and this is where we will pick up our stitches. So let's take a little closer look at the ridges here. When you look at the ridge, you have this little frown, then you have the smile, and right next to it there's another frown. The frowns are actually our garter stitches. This is one garter stitch, this is another garter stitch, and the smile connects the garter stitches. So I usually pick up my stitches at the right edge, so I'm using this frown here. This is where I will pick up my stitches. When we look at the other side, I believe the other side is a little harder to spot. This is the side where we will pick up our stitches first after needle 1. This side looks a little bit different because it will be upside down. When we look at this way, you can see that you have here the smile and your 2 frown stitches or sad stitches. So when you look at your first pick up stitch, it's very likely when you pick up the stitch right at the edge that you will have a hole in between your first needle and your first pick up stitch. In order to avoid this hole, we will pick up the garter stitch or the set stitch, which is right next to our slip stitch. So we will pick up the stitch that is closest to our heel stitches. This one. Before we start, we need to divide the remaining center stitches from the heel back onto needle 1 and needle 4. So I will knit 4 stitches onto my needle 4. And then this is my first needle, the second, the third and the fourth. I will also knit the 4 stitches from my first needle right onto the next knitting needle. When it comes to picking up the edge stitches, there is more than one way. The first way is to pick up and knit the stitch directly with your knitting needle, which can be a little bit more fiddly when you are a beginner. So again, to avoid that hole, I will pick up the stitch that is closest to my heel stitches. You can see you have these 3 bumps here, and I want to pick up the bump that isn't at the edge. I want to have the bump that is right next to all my heel stitches. So you can pick it up and then knit it with your working yarn. This would be one way to pick up all your stitches. But let me show you a way that is much easier, especially when you just started out. Grab a small knitting needle, use the one you have from your cuff. I'm using a 2.5 millimeter needle, and then we are going to pick up all stitches, but we are not knitting them, we only pick them up. So let's look at our ridge here again. We have here our sad stitch, then right next to it is our smile stitch. That smile stitch connects both of our sad stitches. So if it's better for you, you can also pick up the smile here. It's most likely easier for you to pick up the stitch that is smiling at you. So you can pick up the middle stitch as well. So for my sock, I will pick up the stitch that's right next to it at the edge. So, and then I'm looking at my next ridge. I have here the stitch in the middle that's smiling at us. We can pick up this stitch or the stitch that's right next to it. Then let's look at the next ridge here, where we will pick up our next stitch. And the next garter stitch ridge. I will pick up this stitch here. Then this stitch here. And then look at the next garter stitch ridge. I'm sure you can see all these 3 bumps here. You can pick up the one in the middle, but I will pick up the one that's right at the edge here. So I'm picking up all these garter stitch edges here. You can see these 3 bumps. You can pick up the one right in the middle that smiles at you, or you pick up the one that's at the edge here. Again, we have these 3 garter stitch bumps here, the one that's next to our heel, then the one that's right at the edge, and the middle stitch that connects our 2 stitches. You can pick up the middle stitch or the one that is right at the edge. You see, it's really easy to pick up the stitches from a garter stitch edge. I believe it's much easier than picking up from a slip stitch edge. When you have picked up all the stitches, there should be half as many stitches on your needle as the number of rows you have knitted. In my example, I have 26 heel flap rows. This means I have 13 garter stitch ridges. And then I'm going to knit them through the back loop. I knit all the stitches we just picked up through the back loop. If this is too hard for you, you can also knit them normally. It doesn't make a lot of difference. I don't think it does make any difference. I just picked it up at my granny and it never left me. Be careful that you don't split the yarn. You can see here that it sometimes gets really tidy and it's really hard to get into the stitch. So make sure you don't split the yarn here. So now we have knitted all our stitches. We have picked up and knitted the stitches here, and you can see it's really nice and tidy. We don't have any holes. A really popular method to close the hole is to poke a needle or a crochet hook into the gap and pull up a stitch. Well, it does close the hole, but it looks actually really messy and awful. I don't like this method at all and I never use it. So there is one technique that's really easy and it does close the hole, but I only use it with yarn where I know the yarn isn't difficult to work with. So at the moment I'm working with alpaca yarn. Alpaca yarn is very difficult to work with, so I use the second method I'm showing you later. So you can see the horizontal strand here. I'm trying to figure out how I should hold this little swatch so that you can see everything I do. Oops. So again, you have here your gap and you want to close it. You can see here this horizontal strand. Left to it, you can see a stitch and we want the right leg of the stitch. And when we follow the horizontal strand to the right side, we have this right stitch, and from this right stitch, we want the left leg. So we want this leg here. Because we are now knitting together the left leg from the right stitch and the right leg from the left stitch, like this. This will close the hole really nice, especially with this yarn here. So you can work it with your knitting needle, but for a beginner this will be very difficult and fiddly, so I have another option. Grab your small knitting needle from before and then find the two stitches you want to knit together. So the left leg from your right stitch and the right leg from the left stitch. Insert your needle through both stitches and then you knit them together again through the back loop. So please ignore my clumsiness here. This isn't the best day for a video tutorial. I also deleted a whole section with which I knitted and then I had to unravel everything and start over. This was a really bad day for me. So knit both stitches together through the back loop. Even if it doesn't look like in a tutorial, picking up the stitches before and then knit them together through the back loop is much easier than working them with your knitting needle. I will place a marker here in a corner so that we can compare our two pickups later. I have to pick up a whole stitch, not only one pile. And then we will knit normally over needle 2 and 3. These are our instep stitches. So now I've worked to the other side and we also want to close the hole here before we pick up the stitches. So you can either pick up the left leg from your right stitch here and the right leg from the left stitch here and knit them together. So like this, and it will look really neat and tidy. Or we can use the second method. This method is a little bit more advanced, but it does a really great job. So with your crochet hook, count down a few letters. and then insert your crochet hook through the back of the third or fourth letter. So this is where it stopped filming and I had to unravel everything and do it again. So again, count down as many letters as you think are needed to close the hole. Insert your crochet hook downwards from the back into the letter and then twist it clockwise to create a new stitch. I pulled the stitches apart so that you get a clearer picture here. So when you look closely, you can see these three letters at the back. The first one you want to pick up is really hiding. So you have, this is the fiddly part here. You really have to find this first letter. So when you have your letter, bring it onto your crochet hook and then pull it through your twisted stitch on the needle. This can be a little bit tight. Then find the next letter, pick it up and pull it through your stitch on your crochet hook. And then find your last one and pull it also through the stitch on your crochet hook. Well, we just created a new stitch and this should close the hole really nicely as well. You can see here everything is closed. We created a new stitch and there will be no hole. But this is a little bit more fiddliger and more advanced technique than the first one. Transfer your stitch from the crochet hook onto your knitting needle. And then we are ready to pick up all the stitches on the edge again. You can see here your first garter stitch edge. You have this garter stitch here, right at the left side, then the middle stitch, your smile stitch, and the garter stitch that's right next to it. I will pick up the garter stitch that's closest to the edge, but you can also pick up your smile stitch. Then find the next garter stitch, reach and pick up your next stitch, either the smile stitch or the edge stitch here. Again, you can pick up your smile stitch or here the little edge stitch. So we are here at the last stitch between our needles and we will again pick up the stitch that's to the left side, not the edge stitch, because when we pick up this stitch, we will have this little hole here at the connection between our cup stitches and the gusset pickup. So we will pick up the left garter stitch. And then before I'm knitting my stitches through the back loop, I will slip the 4 heel stitches on my smaller knitting needle as well. So now we are ready to knit all the stitches we just picked up and we are knitting them again through the back loop. So now I've knitted my last pickup stitch and I'm now at my 4 heel stitches. So when I knit the 4 heel stitches, I knit them normally through the front loop and I will pull the working yarn really tight. So I'm knitting my first stitch and I really pull here on my working yarn to close the gap. And I'm knitting the next stitch and I'm pulling on my working yarn again. This will close everything really nice. So, and because this is my clumsy day, I also did loose stitches. Why not? But this is really good because you can see how I repair a slipped stitch. So I'm picking up my stitch and you can see all these yarn floats at the back. The first yarn float was created when we slipped the stitch. So we don't want to pick up the first yarn float because this is the float that happens when we slip our stitch purlwise. We want to pick up the second yarn strand. This yarn strand was created when we purled our stitch. So I pick the stitch up with my crochet hook and bring it through the loop on my hook. So, and I know we did knit the next stitch after our slip stitch pattern, and I have to pull this yarn strand also through the stitch. But if the slip stitch pattern would have continued, you would have a small yarn strand at the back, which was created when we slip our stitches, and the strand above your little yarn float would be the correct strand to bring through your crochet hook. So now we have picked up all our stitches, and I will also insert a stitch marker here where we made the twisted stitch with our crochet hook and picked up each letter so that we can compare it later. So after picking up all our stitches, we will knit one plain round of knit stitches. So knit all the stitches from needle 1, 2, 3 and 4. Don't worry if you might have ended up with too much stitches because we will decrease them later anyway. So I have knitted one plain round of knit stitches and I'm now at my decrease round. You can use the notes from the sock knitting tracker to write down each decrease round and plain round. For my decrease round, I will knit all the stitches from needle 1 until 3 stitches are remaining. So when you reached 3 stitches until the end of the needle, knit 2 stitches together and then knit the last stitch. Work over needle 2 and 3 normal knit stitches. And when we reach needle 4, we want to make a decrease right at the beginning. So this means you knit 1 stitch, and then work an SSK. So slip the first stitch knitwise, slip the second stitch knitwise, and then knit both stitches together through the back loop. Now knit normal knit stitches until you reach the end of the needle. So the next round will be a plain knit stitch round with no decreases. You knit all the stitches from needle 1, 2, 3 and 4. When we look at our stitch directly underneath the loop on our needle, you can see that we have worked here and decrease. This way you know you have to knit a plain round. So it's the same for the other side. When we look at the stitch directly underneath our needle, we have here this left leaning decrease. This means we are at the plain round. So I have worked one round without decreases, and now in this round we will work decreases again. On needle 1, I will knit all the stitches until 3 stitches are remaining. And you can see here we have this loop on our needle and then one plain round and the decreases are right underneath the stitch. This means we are now at a decrease round again. If you ever lose track of your decreases, this is how you can spot them. Then work and knit 2 together and then finish by knitting the last stitch. So, and on needle 4, we will knit the first stitch. And again, you can see here the decreases, the plain round, and the loop on our needle. So this means we need to work a decrease now. So I slip one stitch, then I slip the next stitch, and then I work both of them together through the back loop. Knit the rest of the stitches. The next row will be a plain row again. This means you are working only knit stitches without decreases. Don't forget to mark the first needle. This marks needle 1 and the beginning of the round. So when you are finished with knitting your plain round, we are again at a decrease round. One more time. Knit across needle 1 until 3 stitches are remaining. So knit 2 stitches together and then knit the last stitch. Knit over needle 2 and 3. And on needle 4, begin by knitting the first stitch. Then work a slip, slip, knit decrease. So slip one stitch knitwise, slip the second stitch knitwise, and then work them together through the back loop. And then knit the remaining stitches to finish the round. After each decrease round, knit one plain round. This means no decreases. Alternate these rounds until you are back to your starting stitch count. You can see here we have really nice pickup stitches with no holes And this is why picking up stitches from Garter stitch edges are my favorite way. Even if I stretch it, there will be no visible holes at all. So when looking at the corner, we can compare the first method on our swatch and the white sock, which is knitted with Alpaca yarn. You will notice that the first method looks really nice and tidy on the swatch, but not quite as neat on the Alpaca fiber sock. The second method where we created a new stitch looks also really nice and tidy. We have here a small hole, but this can be from all the unraveling I had to do with this video tutorial. Because when we look at my white sock, I don't have a hole at all. It all looks nice, tidy, and really clean. We have here the knit two together decreases, and on the other side you can see the SSK decreases, which are also looking really nice here. Which method you want to use to close the little gap is ultimately up to you. Both of them are working really nice and doing a great job. From here on out you will pretty much knit every stitch, but don't go too far because in the next tutorial I want to show you how you can measure your foot correctly to always achieve the perfect fit, and I also want to show you how you can customize your toe decreases, and we will together finish the toe with a beautiful Kitchener stitch. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this tutorial and knit your first pair of socks with me. I wish you all the best. Until next time. Bye.